this is Arsen Kashkashian, the head buyer and general manager of the Boulder Bookstore, and we're here with Alyssa, our used book buyer, for Inside the Boulder Bookstore. So Alyssa, you do work down in used books. You've done that for a while. You're a senior buyer down there. So what is it like to work in used books? I mean, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? You know, what is the experience like down there?
Well, as used book buyers, we evaluate books that people bring in to sell, and we look at each book in our inventory, which goes back to the late 90s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to see whether a book has a history of selling well, and that determines whether we buy it or not. Condition is another big reason that we might not buy a book, so we like to see books that have been well cared for. And my favorite part of working at the used book desk is just discovering books that I've never seen before, and that's how I find most of my reading material.
Oh, wow, that's good. Like when you open a box, do you feel you have a pretty good idea of like, oh yeah, this is going to be a lot of great stuff, or we're not going to be able to take any of this? Or is it more mixed where you think, I really do have to look up a bunch of these? Like how much of it do you get as soon as you open that box?
It depends. It's usually mixed, and I try to look everything up and just look at each book individually, but sometimes there is a box that it has clearly been really well cared for, and it looks like titles that will definitely sell, so that's always exciting. And then sometimes there's a box that looks like it's been stored in a wet basement, so...
What's the most disgusting thing that you can remember, like when you opened the box? Like, was it mold? Was it a spider? Like, what was the worst?
Spiders aren't too bad, but mold is probably the worst.
Yeah. That's pretty bad, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, so you say you get a lot of your reading material from there, but one of the other things I've noticed, I don't know, we used to do it, I'm not sure if we're still doing it, we used to put up like postcards we'd find and letters. I mean, so you find things that aren't books in these boxes sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, we had a display under our glass counter with photos that we'd found in books, and we find notes and letters and interesting bookmarks from other stores.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes they make you sad. Like I feel like love letters that have, you know, gone astray, I guess, or who knows. Like let you only know like this tiny piece of the story.
Yeah.
So you worked here for a while. You've been here how many, like 4 years?
4 years.
Yeah. So you started maybe a year before COVID. So when that hit, and you know, then we brought you. You didn't work probably for like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, if I had to guess. And then we brought you back. What was that experience like for you? Was it scary? Were you eager to get back to work? I mean, what did you think of that time period?
It was definitely jarring to go from, well, we had a time where we worked by ourselves in the store and the customers weren't here in the store. We just did curbside pickup and deliveries, and we shipped books. So we did a couple months of that. So it was pretty jarring to come back one day and have the store full of customers. But we took a lot of precautions to make sure everyone was safe, and overall I felt safe being here.
I thought for me that was, you know, one of the more difficult times, but it was also one of the more rewarding times because I thought we came together as a staff, like, you know, like we were all working the same hours because since we were the customers weren't here, and then even when the customers were here, it was like a 10 to 6 thing. It wasn't like our huge hours. So in that sense, I felt a sense of camaraderie with the people who came through the pandemic.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I feel like it was during the pandemic, I could be wrong about this, that you read Proust and you read all 7 volumes, right, of In Search of Lost Time?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people say they read Proust, but they read like the first 2 sentences, you know, and they get the pastry and then they're done. So what was that experience like reading all that, 2,000 pages or so?
I read Swan's Way, the first volume, before the pandemic, and then I read the other 6 volumes during the time when we were really isolated, and I found it really comforting because it's just really beautiful writing about nothing much in particular. There's very little plot. It's just as little action as possible stretched out over thousands of pages. But the Madeline scene is the most famous scene, and it just shows how Proust was able to write about things like nostalgia that are really difficult to put into words for most people, but he did it really well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, after reading something like that and then going to like contemporary stuff, does it make it hard to read like a contemporary? Not hard, but do you feel things are lacking now, or is it just a different time and you don't really put them in the same category in your head? Or
I did have a really hard time finding my next book after reading Proust. I ended up reading some Andre Aciman. He wrote Call Me By Your Name, and I found out later that he actually has studied Proust and teaches classes on Proust. So I think that's why his writing really resonated with me.
yeah, he was here in September for the Jaipur Literature Festival, and so he was a really interesting guy. He was talking about his memoir at the time, and he's lived quite the life, like all over the place. So very interesting. Where Proust, I think, was pretty grounded, wasn't he? During his life, he didn't move around a bunch.
He was ill for a lot of his life, and he stayed in one place.
Okay, so I see that you have a couple books with you. Can you tell us about them?
So I'm reading a book about books right now because apparently I can't get enough at work, but it's called Rare Books Uncovered, and it's just a collection of stories about people who have found rare and valuable books in unlikely places, and most of the time didn't realize that they were valuable when they first came across them. And it's just interesting to me to think about the history of a book as an object and all the people who have handled it and all the different lives that a book can have with different readers.
Do you think about that when you're buying used books? That like because you're.
Yeah, I like being part of that and passing a book on from one person to another.
Do you feel like you ever discovered something valuable? Not that we don't really take valuable books. Is the problem.
Yeah,
but
we don't.
But do you see like, whoa, this might be really worth something? And
yeah, I found a Sibley bird guide that was a rare edition, like a really nice leather-bound field guide, which would be really impractical to take out bird watching. And I found a couple of signed books that have been maybe valuable.
All right, what else do you have with us?
So this is another book that I wanted to recommend as a glimpse into the life of a bookseller and a used book buyer, The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bythell. He is a bookstore owner in rural Scotland, and he goes to people's houses and buys collections of books as part of his job, which is something that we do occasionally. So it's just very entertaining, and he writes day-to-day stories about interactions with customers, and very entertaining.
Yeah, my sales rep loves that book too. So he was really high on that. All right, is there any contemporary novels or anything you're reading right now, or are you in the nonfiction realm at this point?
I'm reading more nonfiction recently. I'm reading some Bill Bryson travel writing, and that's just funny and informative, easy to read.
Do you have a travel destination in mind for yourself?
I'd like to go to France.
Yeah, so would I.
Yeah.
Why France?
After reading Proust, he describes Paris really beautifully, and other places in France, and I'm studying French, so maybe I'll be able to use that.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Alyssa, for doing this.
Thank you.
All right, and that's another episode of Inside the Boulder Bookstore. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoyed this video.